The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past not only defined a console generation, but would inspire Zelda design for years to come since its initial release in 1991. So, how do you create a pseudo-sequel set within the same Hyrule as A Link to the Past, but change just enough to have it not be constantly compared to its predecessor? Well, Nintendo managed to do just that with The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, changing just enough to have it be separate as its own entity, but also still have connections to its A Link to the Past roots. Now, a small disclaimer before we begin. I personally did not grow up with A Link to the Past. In fact, I didn't play the game until I purchased it on the Wii Virtual Console through the Wii U in 2013, which happens to be the same year that A Link Between Worlds came out. I also didn't play A Link Between Worlds when it initially came out. I had purchased the game when it came out, as I was building up a Legend of Zelda collection at the time, but I wouldn't play it actually for the first time fully through until we would get to 2019 for the playthrough on my channel. And while I do love A Link to the Past greatly, I actually think I prefer A Link Between Worlds more. Not just from a story perspective, but from a gameplay and quality of life update perspective as well. And that's what this review hopes to illustrate to all of you why I like The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds a little bit more than The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So, why don't we get first started with the story of A Link Between Worlds. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds begins like how most Legend of Zelda games begin, with our main protagonist, Link, sleeping like a log inside of a nice cozy bed. Well, like how most Legend of Zelda games begin anyway. Wind Waker Link likes to sleep on the floor, but hey, I ain't gonna judge. While sleeping, Link is having a recurring nightmare of him nearly dying to a giant shadowy figure, but before he can figure out what this all means, he is woken up by his boss's son and best friend, Gully. Gully was sent by Link's boss in order to make sure that he reports to work today. After arriving to work and getting an earful not only from his boss, but from the captain of the Hyrule Guard, Link is given the task to deliver the captain's sword to him, as the captain had forgotten it at the blacksmith's before heading out. If you weren't scolding me, you probably wouldn't have forgotten it. Traveling through Hyrule, Link arrives at the captain's first destination, the Sanctuary. But before he can enter the Sanctuary, the doors slam shut and lock behind him, with screams being heard right inside. So to combat this danger, Link is sent into the Sanctuary catacombs in order to get into the secret entrance to the Sanctuary and find out what the heck is going on. Once inside the Sanctuary, we are introduced to Yuga, a wizard seeking perfection through the descendants of the 7 sages of Hyrule. How does he seek this perfection? Well, by turning the descendants into pastel paintings. They look rather nice, actually. After sealing away the first of the sages, and easily thwarting Link with his power of the second dimension, Yuga escapes and leaves us for dead. Luckily, a traveling merchant by the name of Ravio happened to be traveling by and picked us up and took us to an abandoned house that happened to be our own. After asking Link if he could stay at his house and using his very persuasive skills of "but thou must," Link is given a bracelet by Ravio as thanks, and heads off to Hyrule Castle to warn Princess Zelda of the danger that Yuga threatens the Kingdom of Hyrule with. Fearing that Yuga wishes to revive the evil King Ganon, Zelda gives us the Pendant of Courage and sends us to track down Yuga, to which we end up heading over to the Eastern Palace. We end up confronting Yuga once more, and it goes about as well as you think. Yuga manages to seal us within a painting, leaving us for dead on the wall in the Eastern Palace. But with luck, Ravio's bracelet reacts to us being in the wall, and we re-emerge from it. After re-emerging, we have gained the new ability of being able to merge with any flat surface wall we so wish to use. So, to combat this danger, we must obtain the Master Sword, the Blade of Evil's Bane, and break the barrier that has now enveloped Hyrule Castle. After breaking the barrier and entering Hyrule Castle, it turns out that Yuga's been pretty busy and managed to capture all the 7 sages. Good job, Link. And has now captured Princess Zelda. Tackling Yuga once more, Yuga is mortally wounded and heads off into Hyrule Castle's deeper catacomb. After cornering him, he disappears into a strange hole in the wall. Going through this hole in the wall with our new ability, we end up in a darker version of Hyrule Castle. This darker version turns out to be part of the Kingdom of Lorule, an alternate dimension similar to that of Hyrule, only with a little bit of a monster problem. After reviving Ganon and stealing his Triforce of Power by merging with the evil king, Yuga is about to finish us off before we are rescued by Princess Hilda, the ruler of Lorule. Hilda tells us that we are to go and find the 7 sages of Hyrule scattered throughout the palaces. Once doing so, we can return and face off against the evil Yuga Ganon and save Princess Zelda, whose painting happened to be stuck inside of where Yuga Ganon resides. So, our mission is clear. Save Princess Zelda and Hyrule, while also saving Lorule in the process. Zelda gameplay for the largest part of the series' history has generally remained the same. This also holds true for A Link Between Worlds in many regards. As such, I'm going to focus on the major new addition that A Link Between Worlds brings to the Zelda formula, and by golly is it quite a change. The main change being that you do not obtain dungeon-specific items through the dungeons themselves. Remember Ravio? Well, he's not just some freeloader in our house, as Ravio sets up shop right after the first dungeon alone. What Ravio does is rent out items for us to use in the dungeons or to get to the dungeons themselves in the first place. From classics such as the hookshot, bombs, and bow and arrow to newer items such as the sand rod or tornado rod respectively. Ravio rents out these items to you and you're allowed to keep them for as long as you like. The catch, if you fall in battle at any point, Ravio will take the items back and you will have to re-rent them. While this seems rather unfortunate if you happen to have all of Ravio's items at once, this is never really an issue because the rental rate is both extremely cheap and running out of rupees is never really an issue because of the small dungeon mini games that are located throughout Hyrule and Lorule that pay you out handsomely in rupees. So, what about ammunition? Well, replacing ammunition for these items is a magic meter that refills over time and is consumed whenever any item is used. Yep, any item. Want to swing the hammer? Consume some magic. Want to shoot a bow? Consume some magic. Want to throw a bomb? Consume some magic. This could lead to some wait time if the player decides to try and spam items or decides to merge onto a wall, which also ends up consuming the magic. But with how rapid the meter ends up recharging, this never really becomes an issue either. Rupees themselves are a major driving force in A Link Between Worlds. You use them to play minigames, buy items such as potions from the witch's shop, rent and later buy Ravio's items from him, and even to get a bottle at one point. Rupees are both plentiful in Hyrule and Lorule, but you'll notice bigger payouts of rupees from enemies in Lorule rather than Hyrule. The challenge in this case, though, is that in Lorule, enemies hit like a semi-truck. Moblins, Hinoxes, Like-Likes, and even new Rupee Like-Likes all plague the land of Lorule. So much so that Lorule has become corrupt and is made more difficult to traverse, due to the fact that there are giant fissures in the land that require Link to travel back and forth between Lorule and Hyrule just to get to a new area in Lorule itself. And you can do this by accessing the new portals similar to the one we found inside of Hyrule Castle when chasing Yuga back when he captured Princess Zelda. To minimize the constant back and forth that the game would require, there is a fast travel method in A Link Between Worlds. Early in the game, the player meets one of the 7 sages, Irene, who gives Link a bell that allows her to use her magic broom to pick Link up and take him to a previous location, so long as Link has activated the weather vane in that corresponding area. Even after Irene is captured by Yuga, Link still has access to her broom in both Hyrule and Lorule, which I love. Weather vanes are always located in key areas right in front of dungeons, palaces, towns, and are meant to use not only as a waypoint for fast travel, but also as a way to save the game. Similar to how the player would save a game inside of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask through the owl statues, and later in the Majora's Mask 3D as being the only way to being able to save the game. If there were a low point in the gameplay, I would have to say that would be in with Mai hunting. Near Link's house in Hyrule, there's a cave that requires a bomb to use in order to open it up. Once inside, you're introduced to Mother Mai, a giant octopus-like creature who has lost her 100 babies and only accepts them in sets of 10. She's lost her babies in, at first, Hyrule, but soon you find out there are a lot of Mai in Lorule as well, 50 in each world. Upon meeting her, your map is given a small Maiamai icon, which can act as a Maiamai counter for how many Maiamai are located within that specific map screen section. What's the purpose of finding these Maiamai? Well, should you take 10 of her babies back to her, she will upgrade one of your weapons, provided you've bought it from Ravio in the first place, to a more powerful version of that item. Generally doing more damage or having a larger area of effect, these items make dealing with the tougher enemies of Lorule a breeze. Collect all 100 Maiamai, and Link is rewarded with an upgraded spin attack. What's the major issue I have with the Maiamai hunting? Well, two things. One, many require the Titan Mitts in order to get, and a lot of them are locked behind minigames that require the player to pay for that minigame again just to obtain the Maiamai. So, if for any reason you haven't started the Maiamai hunting early on in the game, you'll find yourself backtracking to previously visited minigames just for one Maiamai. And touching on the minigames real quick, there are quite a few minigames inside of A Link Between Worlds. Hyrule Hotfoot, Rupee Rush in both Hyrule and Lorule, Kuko dodging, and, unfortunately, the Octoball Derby. The Octoball Derby is what I consider to be the biggest blemish of minigame on this entire list. All of these minigames are used in order to get a piece of heart, including the Treacherous Tower, but the Treacherous Tower could also net you the Super Net and the Super Lamp respectively. What Octoball Derby does, though, is takes random luck and chance and puts it in a minigame that hides behind it a piece of heart. It's not worth it, it's not fun, and it's the low point in this entire game for me. So beware, Octoball Derby is not your friend, and you'll be spending quite a bit of rupees inside of it just to get one piece of heart. So through all of this, you might be wondering, what other connections does A Link to the Past have to A Link Between Worlds? Well, besides the fact that Hyrule's map and Lorule's map are basically identical to A Link to the Past's Hyrule map and Dark World map, a lot of the tracks used inside of A Link Between Worlds, specifically for Hyrule and a bit for Lorule, are actually updated versions of A Link to the Past tracks. Koji Kondo conducted the original A Link to the Past score, but for A Link Between Worlds, composer Ryo Nagamatsu would update the tracks for the Nintendo 3DS, and they sound amazing. Ryo Nagamatsu was a name I did not recognize until doing research for this review, and while his sound library is not nearly as large as Koji Kondo's, his contributions are definitely well documented. For being the main composer of Super Mario Galaxy 2, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Mario Kart 8, Splatoon 2, even doing the Legend of Zelda 30th Anniversary Concert, and being the main composer for Link's Awakening's remake, Nagamatsu has definitely made a name for himself in the composer world for Nintendo. However, I believe that the tracks that shine the most in the game are the ones specifically made for A Link Between Worlds. My favorite tracks are definitely all of Yuga's themes, Lorule Castle's theme, Return of the Hero, and the various Milk Bar themes that were made for A Link Between Worlds, with my favorite Milk Bar theme being Ballad of the Goddess from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Definitely those tracks are something that will be remembered for a while, but sadly, like many Nintendo soundtracks, they are only available physically within Japan, and importing them can be an expensive endeavor. One day, Nintendo may release their tracks onto a streaming service. At least I hope one day they do. Come on, Nintendo. Square Enix finally did it with Nobuo Uematsu's track for Final Fantasy. Surely you can throw us Nintendo fans a bone of some kind. At least do it for Kirby! Come on! I love Kirby. Either way, the soundtracks in The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds will have you very much captivated, especially thanks to the fact that the Nintendo 3DS no longer has to rely on a sound chip to simulate sounds. All the tracks composed on the 3DS are full orchestra soundtracks or full orchestra sound files, unlike the DS before it, which could only do MIDI files. So, give the soundtrack a listen. So, what can I say about The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds? Well, besides the fact that I really regret sitting on this game for so long. The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds has gone up from me being a game that I was really indifferent towards, to becoming a game that I can consider one of my all-time favorite Legend of Zelda games. And I was certainly not expecting that when first going into the game, originally blind, and then later on doing a full playthrough of the game for the channel. And again, I just cannot stress enough, I really regret sitting on this game for as long as I did. The music is top-notch, the story is very lighthearted and fun while also having a sense of urgency. The gameplay is a lot of fun, and it really just takes The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and refines it to something that I think a lot of modern players would really enjoy. Unfortunately, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds will always be compared to A Link to the Past. And while many will hold up A Link to the Past as being one of the best, if not the best, Legend of Zelda game, I still hold that A Link Between Worlds is very good in its own right and definitely deserves to be in the top Zelda games. It's definitely a game I recommend picking up if you have a Nintendo 3DS. As of this time, there are no ports of The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, but there is a sequel game, The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, which takes place, I believe, in the same timeline as The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, but is removed from this exact story. Maybe I'll do that game one day. I do own it, but I need to have some friends to play with. I mean, I do have enough 3DSs to do so, but hey, I need to get friends in order to be able to play with. One aspect of this review that I did not mention was the fact that there was Street Pass functionality for A Link Between Worlds, and that you could fight Shadow Links for bounties to get more rupees. But since, unfortunately, Street Pass has been shut down, you can no longer use this function to my knowledge. Plus also, I ain't taking my 3DS out of my house because it's got a capture card on it. So, yeah, you ain't gonna be seeing footage of that from me, unfortunately. Another thing you won't be seeing from me is a hero mode playthrough of The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Much like how The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword had, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds has an advanced, harder difficulty once you end up beating the game the first time. This mode is known as Hero Mode. Enemies do a tank full of damage, as if low Rulian enemies didn't do enough damage as it is. You have to beat the game in order to unlock it, and while I love this game, the Legend of Zelda series is not one that I instantly marathon one right after the other, because I tend to get burnt out on Legend of Zelda games. But it is a good challenge for those who wish to end up seeking it, and is something that I think would add a lot of replayability, along with the minigames that have unlimited modes, such as the Kuko dodging minigame, which has an unlimited mode to it, and you just see how long you survive. You can play that mode if you so wish. Overall, though, I believe The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds is a great game to play, from start to finish, even with Octoball Derby. It's one thing I think that many Zelda fans will greatly enjoy, and one that I hope that you add to your collection. Therefore, I'm giving this game a full Shiro carrying Gully away out of 9. So anyway guys, I'm gonna end it off right here. This has been Neronium, and I thank you all for watching The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds review. See you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to check out the playthrough where clips in this review came from, check out the link on the right for The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds playthrough. It was 100% run and a lot of fun to do. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.